Hi everybody, thanks for taking the time to look at this video or parts of this video which features the 2021-22 Harknett Music Honor Roll for Concert Band, this year featuring music for Flex Band and Adaptable Band. The titles, the selections on this list were chosen based on teachability and viability for cohorted situations, reduced instrumentation, just to kind of work within the limitations that we have going back to playing this fall. So I'm not going to say too much more right now. I do a lot of talking throughout the video about the pieces specifically. If you have any questions about these selections or any other repertoire or programming, advice or recommendations, please send me an email. My contact information is on the screen. If you'd like to place an order or request a quote, feel free to call the store, or all of these titles are now online on the Harknett site, which is www.harknettmusic.com/honor roll. You'll be able to load your selections into our online web cart and submit an order that way as well. And all of the pricing is available online, as well as links to the publisher sites where you can actually read more in-depth information about the pieces. The information that's on their sites contains things like composer stories and intent and a little bit of more background and context for each of the selections. So let's get on with the session. Havana Nights, Randall Standridge. This is definitely grade 3.5 to 4, maybe harder, depending on what your views are. This is a flex band version of this. He has written it both for full ensemble as well as adaptable flex. There's a little bit of a story behind it. It's just sort of based on the mambo, and I'll tell you what he says. Havana Nights is a concert work for wind ensemble, but it was conceived as a short ballet. The action takes place in the mambo clubs of Havana as our heroine dances her way through the nightlife. She encounters another young dancer, and the two begin a flirtatious, seductive conversation through the art of movement. So there's all kinds of imagery, all kinds of pictures. There is there are research opportunities in here. If you're going to turn this into a project, to be honest with you, it's a difficult piece. It's a puzzle. There's a lot to piece together here for an upper level ensemble. This is probably a piece that no one's going to tackle right away at the beginning of this particular year, but certainly later on this year or next year when things start to get closer to being back to normal. This is a really well put together piece. It's very exciting, it's very engaging, and again, it doesn't sound like anything Randall Standridge has written. We're used to a certain group of characteristics and sometimes even certain time signatures and certain rhythms and a certain consistency that way that we've come to sort of rely upon from him, and that's, to be honest, what makes his music so good and saleable. This is not the same. This is something else, and it's something new, and it's something pretty great. Havana Nights, Randall Standridge. Shield of Honor, Carmen Gassi. Shield of Honor was written to provide an opportunity for young ensembles to work on a variety of articulations and dynamic contrasts while enjoying the dialogue between the different parts. The title was inspired by all of the first responders who risked their lives to assist those in need. So there is sort of the basis for the sound of the piece. Cleverly disguised syncopation in this piece. It's a great opportunity to teach, extra musical elements and those which aren't necessarily in the fundamental category. There's stuff like call and response happening in the melody. Sometimes between the sections themselves, and then sometimes between a section of the band and percussion. So a section will have a few bars, and then percussion will respond in a few bars. So it's really kind of cool that way, and it's a little bit different. Overall, the percussion is fun. The parts are very engaging, especially for a young group. I don't feel that the difficulty of this piece is a far, high reach. This is, I think, for most Ontario programs at this point in time, given the current environment, this is end of the first year playing. It's not really a big blow for anybody, and it gives everybody an opportunity to have a dynamic role in music making. The Eighth Note Flexible Band series is playable with as few as 5 parts with no percussion. So it literally is flexible, and it's voiced well, and the parts are accessible. And the thing to remember about Eighth Note Publications is not only that they are made in Ontario, but they are predominantly all school music teachers, either currently or past. So they know what the standard is, and oftentimes with the grading and things like that, they'll often push the standard a little bit harder, which is great for Ontario teachers because that gives you the something to sort of reach for and sort of strive towards with your students. So this is Shield of Honor, Carmen Gassi. Downtown Strut, Tyler S. Grant. Tyler is now officially a high school or probably middle school band director. He's been composing since he was very young. I know that he started with FJH Music, Brian Ballmages, when he was 13 or 14 or 15 or something like that. He's had some really great compositions that have been released over the last 5-6 years in particular. So Downtown Strut is an easy, flex adaptable piece. It's an electroacoustic work for a beginning band that captures the energy and excitement of the city. So he's an Atlanta dweller. He lives in the big city, and he says, living in Atlanta, I always find it electrifying to listen to the symphony of subway trains, garbage trucks, bumper-to-bumper traffic, and crowds of people in the streets. Through the electronics, the musicians merge their sounds with an infectious groove that will keep everyone's feet tapping throughout. The piece is easy. It's totally accessible in all aspects of notes and rhythms. It's fun to play with the accompaniment, and it's really necessary to play it with this electronic accompaniment to get the full effect. You don't actually need live percussion players if you don't have them in your cohort or whatever the situation is. There are tracks available through links through his website and what have you once you buy the piece at multiple tempos. And there's a lot that you can do with this in terms of, slowing it down, speeding it up, playing it in several different ways. And again, with different instrument combinations representing different voices. So it's a clever little piece for Flex Band. Downtown Strut, Tyler S. Grant. In Blue or Green, Giovanni Santos. So this is just absolutely amazing in almost every way. There's so much you can do with this. The best part about the adaptability of this is you can pick and choose what you're going to do, who's going to do it. The students can have a lot of fun, trying all of the different parts out, and even getting some of the woodwind and brass players to get involved with percussion, because the groove underneath all of the spaghetti type stuff that's going on throughout this eventual addition of layer by layer by layer is quite exciting. And if I was not a percussionist, I would want to learn the groove and be part of making that groove in the preparation and study of this piece. This is definitely a project piece, right? You can use this to teach almost everything with some amount of creativity, but I look at this and I have just idea bank overload. So I'm excited to hear some of you tackle this project, and I hope you enjoy In Blue or Green, Giovanni Santos. Circuit Breaker, Randall Standridge. So this is a 5/4 piece. It does have mixed meter. It has a pretty important electronic backing track to it. So when you listen to it, try to sort of take that with a grain of salt. This is more of a project piece, to sort of work on electroacoustic music, but to also work on a different sound and work on the meter. And there are some more challenges to this one. However, he's kept the ranges pretty modest throughout the piece. Technically, it's not that difficult, but I think it's just a matter of putting it all together. It's a really neat sounding piece. I tend to like things that have got the repetitive, rhythmic motives and that have got clear differences in articulation. There's some fun dynamic stuff in here, and again, it's this whole electroacoustic music movement is fun, and it's something new, and it works really well for the situation that we're in with limited instrumentation and cohorts. So it'll give you that extra layer on the bottom. So this is Circuit Breaker, Randall Standridge. For Those Who Have Served, David Marlatt. Sounding very patriotic in nature, For Those Who Have Served would make an ideal selection to be performed at a reflective event or simply to pay homage to the thousands of men and women who have served in the military or frontline workers during times of crisis. The noble theme is first heard in a solo voice before moving to a more full sonority. A second theme with a very different feel is performed before the original soloist's sound brings this lyrical piece to a very peaceful conclusion. It's solemn, it's short, it's very lyrical, and it's very melodic. This is a great piece to use for a Remembrance Day service, assembly, video recording, whatever you're doing. A project associated with it might be to have the students prepare something and maybe do a short talk about somebody in their life that they consider a hero, or somebody that they would like to dedicate the performance of the piece to, and maybe then tell us why, and why that person is important to them. So this is for those who have served. David Marlatt. Escape from Thunder Mountain. This tropical island volcano, Thunder Mountain, has lain dormant for years. As a party of adventurous researchers work atop the legendary mountain, it begins to shake with pre-eruption tremors. So this is a really fun piece. It's composed really, really well. There are a few very specific things I like. I like the chromaticism, specifically the use of the tritone interval in the melody. The ba 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 ba. You'll hear it over and over again, so it's a good opportunity to sort of teach chromaticism. I like the eighth note pulse. It's very driving and intense and sort of forward moving in the two outer movements, the sort of first section and third section. It's a good sort of baseline as far as, keeping steady tempo as an ensemble. The multiple sections are very different from one another. The middle section, the lyrical section, is lovely. I just wish I could extract that middle section and have Dr. Scott Watson expand it into its own lyrical piece, and it would make such a good festival piece. It's so good, and it's so different from the other sections. That would be great. The model for Alfred Publishing 4-part Flex is pretty cool. It's very clean, and the parts assign very, very easily. And to me, this would be a great piece for class, and when extracurricular rehearsals come back in some form or the other, this would be great to work on because it's just very engaging. It's a long ending. It could have ended a little bit sooner. However, there's a lot of statement being made, and it does end quite nicely as well. It's a loud piece. How loud can you play this with your cohort of 6 or 8 kids? So, enjoy. This is Escape from Thunder Mountain. On the Open Sea, Carmen Gassi. I really like the way this piece is written. There's such good attention paid to articulation, practice, and teaching. I really like the fast 4/4, very sort of period sounding music, but it's it's really well written for educational purposes. Again, I like the articulation. I like the dynamic variations. I like the fact that everybody has a moving part. No one's really sitting anywhere. Percussion is manageable, and if you look at both versions of the piece, or actually there's several different versions because there's chamber versions as well with Eighth Note Publications. This one works really, really well, and I think it's going to be a good fit, particularly for those of you that have got really small cohorts, with, I'm going to say, grade 9 or grade 8 players who have had a chance to, play and learn a couple scales and things like that. So this is On the Open Sea. Carmen Gassi. Enjoy. Apollo's Chariot, grade 2.5 from Nathan Daughtry from C. Allen Publications. This is the flex band version of his original piece. The original was a grade 2. He's got the flex at a grade 2.5. Apollo, the Greek god of prophecy, music, and healing, served as the inspiration for Apollo's Chariot. One of his daily tasks was to harness his chariot with 4 horses and drive the sun across the sky. Apollo was also a great warrior, bringing down the almighty Achilles with one of his arrows. So the imagery of all of that is what sort of inspired him to write the piece the way that he wrote it. So Nathan Daughtry is the owner and new president, a couple years now, president of C. Allen Publications. He's a brilliant, world-class percussionist. And he incorporates, especially in his band compositions, always a lot of very active, exciting, engaging, and often very challenging percussion. This it's a very programmatic work. There's definitely a story being told here. Lots of imagery. He says thundering percussion provides the fuel throughout the piece. And I say, my favorite part of the piece, listen to the bass line voice. The middle voices, and you'll see this in the score too, they get the opportunity to actually play the bass part. So he's moved it around so that it's not always in parts, part number 4. It's a great opportunity to sort of teach that whole pyramid of sound concept and fundamental pitches to students who wouldn't have, otherwise gotten too far into that with the higher pitched instruments. Yes, there's a lot of percussion. When you break down the parts and look at all the different instruments and handheld things that he's incorporated, it's probably not all necessary. And in a cohort, obviously, it's not going to be doable. So, certain things can be omitted here and there as needed. So this is Apollo's Chariot, grade 2.5, Nathan Daughtry. So, Mandalorian Star Wars series. This is a great arrangement by Paul Murtha. It sort of falls in the grade 2.5, probably grade 3 category. There's a lot of fun stuff in here. There are many teachable moments in here as well. And of course, the music is going to be familiar to many of the students and eventually your audience. This works on the Hal Leonard standard flex band model that they've been using for years and years and years. And so, what I mean by that is the voices are assigned logically to logical sounding instruments. So the great thing about Hal Leonard Flex also is that you can actually make it into a full orchestra setting because you've got all the string parts included in parts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is Mandalorian Paul Murtha arrangement. Celtic Air and Dance, Michael Sweeney. I have a description written here of the piece, but I'm not going to read it because if you don't know, Celtic Air and Dance, one of the most performed, prolific pieces in all of wind band literature from grades 0.5 all the way to 6. This is one of the most performed pieces for band. If you don't know it, then go on YouTube and listen to the thousands of performances and recordings of this piece. This is one of my personal top selling products from my 23 years in the industry. It's on numerous festival syllabi and lists, and it's been performed at all of the big conferences, conventions, and shows, and it's included in clinics and reading sessions. And so now there's an adaptable flex band model of this piece, and it's a little bit easier than the original, which was part of Hal Leonard's Music Works series in grade 1.5 when it came out close to 15 years ago, if not more. And the flex band version works works really well. Now, the one thing to know with Hal Leonard Flex, and of course, most of you who have dealt with Flex Band Editions before have dealt with their 5-voice model. So this is reduced even further, and it works. It works. So if you're looking for a way to incorporate classic band literature at a lower level into your curriculum this year, this is a really good buy for that, because when full ensembles and the whole safety thing changes, you'll be able to migrate into the full band version of this if you so choose. So this is Celtic Air and Dance, Michael Sweeney. Champions Rising. I love this blurb. This dynamic work captures the rising champion spirit in all of us. Bold melodic lines and powerful percussion writing convey virtues of persistence, resilience, determination, and excellence. After plenty of melodic and harmonic development, the music comes to a thrilling conclusion. The fully adaptable version will give you maximum flexibility with your instrument needs, and it does allow for a large number of instrument combinations. I love the way this piece ends. About 16 bars or so from the end, there are these huge flowing crescendos that are very sudden, like fast swells, and it's just written so well. Adrian Sims is becoming a star composer for Brian Balmages and FJH. He's got such great ideas. They're very original sounding. They're intense, but he's following all the rules, and the music just sounds so good. He just writes so well. There's always an energy to his pieces. In fact, one of the other pieces on this list is called Energy of his. Fresh ideas, a lot of percussion, accessible music. I love the adaptable arrangement of this piece because all of the different voices have activity. They're all mobile. No one's ever sitting and doing nothing, which is important for the situation that we're in right now. There's a lot to learn here, even in this, in the flex band or adaptable version. So this is Champions Rising, Adrian Sims. Starfire Fanfare, Randall Standridge. So this is a 6/8 with some moving parts, and it has, an eighth note driving rhythm throughout. He has composed this for young slash, advanced beginning band in full band format, as well as this flex band model. The flex band version works really well. It's very cohesive. He says Starfire Fanfare is intended to evoke the feel and sound of cinematic scores for space opera films and games such as Star Wars, Star Trek, and Halo, and others. So you will hear not specific actual references to those things, but you'll hear similarities in the orchestration, even through the flexible model that we're presenting here. It is, a reach for a first-year ensemble, but it's certainly a good option to, again, get out of the band book for a while. Get out of, your regular, assessment material that's built into your method book and try something else. So this is Starfire Fanfare, Randall Standridge. Hymn to the Dawn by Kimberly Archer. The original composition is a tribute piece. She composed it in memory of her first composition teacher. In her words, Hymn to the Dawn conveys a sense of beauty and longing. Although the title suggests moving forward, the music is meant to reflect the unresolved nature of our relationships with loved ones who have now passed on. So just quickly, sort of a teaching idea for this, and especially if you get into sort of reflective rehearsal strategies, have the students ever had to deal with loss in any form themselves? Does some of the sounds in the piece make them feel any of the feelings that they would like to explore the piece further and use it as their own tribute? So have they lost a family member or a friend or even a pet? And could the performance of this piece and process of this piece be dedicatory to that person or pet? My suggestion for this, if this is a piece that you're considering programming, is please listen to the full performance recording, the non-FlexBand version. So the one that we're featuring here is the 6-part adaptable version. Go on the C. Allen Publications website. The link is actually also in your handout for the original, or find it on YouTube. You'll just be able to hear in a cohesive setting what all of the voices are sounding like properly, as opposed to the MIDI recording that is in the video here. It's a pretty controlled, expressive lyrical piece, and there's a lot of room for students to work on things like phrase, breathing, delicate entries, obviously tone development, intonation, all that fun lyrical stuff. Gives you a chance to sort of develop that whole concept of them taking extra air on the intake to execute quieter dynamics with more control. So this is Hymn to the Dawn, Kimberly Archer. Energy by Adrian B. Sims Adrian, I mentioned at another point of this session, is a brilliant young up-and-coming composer, composes for FGH Music. His music is very cleanly composed. He follows all of the rules, but he's got a new, fresh set of ideas and sounds, and most of his pieces are quite intense, and he loves to use the ostinato and repeating rhythmic motives, particularly in background parts. He is very good at incorporating counter melodic movement, and for those reasons alone, these are very teachable pieces, right? Because it gives you the opportunity to, show your students that the people who aren't playing their parts, in the case of this adaptable model, the ones who are playing the other voices, are doing things that are totally different, and they need to listen to what's going on. So this arrangement of energy in the adaptable model is really nice for a small group, because it'll give everyone that sort of challenge to be able to maintain their part while they hear the counter melodies and backgrounds doing opposing things to what they're doing. You can hear some influences there. I think one of them is probably his editor and boss at FJH Music, Brian Balmages. But overall, this is a wonderful piece, and it's, like I said, it's got some intensity and some chops to it, and there are some challenges for sure, but it'll be a fun one to put together, and especially work on in a cohorted situation towards some type of in-class performance, or maybe even a rehearsal and performance setting later. So this is Energy, Adrian B. Sims. Lullaby, this is a brand new 2021 release, Peter Meakin. I feel like this is a departure. It's a different side of Pete's lyrical composing. It's very, very soothing. It's very calming. It's very peaceful, but it still has a drive to it and an underlaying intensity, which I really like. It's got this forward moving momentum over top of a defined eighth note pulse. There is quite a bit going on here. To me, this is a gradeless piece of music, and what I mean by that is you're going to get out of it as much as you put into it, and for that reason, the grade level can actually fluctuate because there's a lot you can do musically and in terms of interpretation with a piece like this. Is the piano part integral? Yes, if you've got a player. However, all of the right hand is doubled in the mallet percussion part. I think it's written for vibes in the score, but of course you can use whatever you have. And the bass line, so the left hand of the piano part, could be played by, a double bass. It is represented in one of the in the lowest voice of the adaptable instrumentation score, except for the first couple of bars, which you could replicate and move around to somebody in the band if you needed to. So this piece was composed as part of the Creative Repertoire Initiative group. Specifically, it's an inclusion of a 5-movement suite called Sweet Treats. So, the 5 movements are 5 different pieces written by 5 of the founding organizing members of the Creative Repertoire Initiative, which started up last year. So the 5 are Pete Meakin, Brian Balmages, Frank Ticelli, Jennifer Jolly, and Alex Shapiro. So all of the pieces are amazing, and they are available as a package of 5, and Harknett is carrying that package. It retails for about $225, and the name of that package is Sweet Treats. Alternatively, you can buy this piece, which is Lullaby, which is one of the movements by Peter Meakin, individually. So here it is, Lullaby, Peter Meakin. Hypernova Rising, Steve Danu. This is a piece that's written by a composer who typically specializes in higher end band pieces, so it's nice to see that he has done a sort of young band, adaptable modeled piece. This is distributed through Murphy Music Press. It's an independent composition by the composer. It's a short, easy piece with very, very flexible parts. The one thing that I like a lot about it that you never hear in beginning band music is a very tight chordal structure, and specifically he's included the 9th in a lot of these chords in the melody, which is a nice color note that you never ever hear this early. So I like his texture a lot. It's going to be a little challenging right off the get-go, obviously dealing with intonation when the chords are this close together. But in my opinion, that's kind of a good thing. It gives you something to sort of nip in the bud at an early stage. It'll also sort of emphasize cross listening, ensemble listening, and because you're probably going to be in a cohorted situation while you're rehearsing this, you can play around with instrumentation and setups and things like that so that people can hear other people's roles and especially the voices that they're representing on the score. It's a nice way, it's a very short piece, right? So it's a nice way to get oriented with band music outside of the instructional material, outside of the method book, outside of the little snippet pieces that we're doing in the method book for assessment. This is just a little bit more, and it's nice. So, Hypernova Rising. Defenders of the Realm, Jeremy Bell. This piece is deceptive in terms of what category it actually falls into. I hear it as a big picture, lyrical, expressive piece working within moderate tempoed sections with a couple of them with faster and more dense rhythms. Jeremy Bell does this really, really well. He writes very sort of quasi-cinematic music. It's very dramatic. It's really easy to listen to. His sonorities are lovely. His modulations, the way he moves between chords and progressions, like all of this stuff just works really well for him. His pieces are always so warm sounding, and they're always a great opportunity to work on that ensemble development concepts of balance and blend and sort of tone development and listening across the ensemble. He's written so many great pieces across the levels, really specifically in the last 5 or 6 years. Another one that's sort of in this category that is actually lyrical that I like a lot, and I've helped a lot of people program it for festivals, called Memories from Another Time. It's a grade 1.5, so give that one a listen if you're not familiar with his writing. And on the faster side, and even more cinematic sounding than this, he's got a great grade 3 piece called Einerjar. Spelling is Einerjar. There might be an H in there that I missed. It might be Einherjar. Look that one up as well. Of course, all of these are always in stock at Harknett. So, getting back to the piece at hand, this is Defenders of the Realm, Jeremy Bell. Enjoy. Count to 10, Alex Shapiro. Alex is an American composer. She's very well known for her electroacoustic compositions. One of her most well-known works for band with recorded accompaniment is called Paper Cut. It's a visual project piece, and it's published by Hal Leonard, a subsidiary called Band Quest that supported the American Composers Forum. So check out Paper Cut. You need to watch it on YouTube because it is a visual project piece. It's really neat, and there's a long list of others that she's published, either self-published or done through Hal Leonard over the years. This one is self-published. It's called Count to 10. This is there's so many things about this piece that stick out to me. Obviously, it's very different. It's very fun. It's going to give your students who have opted for virtual learning something to do. It's going to give kids who can't have access to instruments something to do. And you can use this to do so many things, right? Obviously, mixed meter and meter changes and time changes is number one, but there's a groove, right? This is a very, very, very groovy tune, and there's a lot to feel in here, and there's this intensity in this little piece that is unlike anything I've heard. It's so much fun and so different. So, Count to 10, Alex Shapiro. Where Stand the Dauntless, Vince Gassi. This is a Canadian composition by Vince, written for, commissioned by Dolphin Senior Public School in the Peel District School Board. So the students in that music program, as well as their teacher, are the Dauntless. This is Vince Gassi. This is what Vince does so well. He writes the overture style, festival ready piece. Well, you do need to actually learn it and rehearse it and then perform it successfully, but all of the tools are there in the piece. So much teachable stuff. There's almost too many things to list because it's everything. You've got a great variation of styles. You've got sections that are very distinctively different from each other. My favorite Vince things are the way he writes melody. He puts intervals, sometimes big intervals, right in the melody, and that's really great for students and ear training and oral skill development. Vince likes his meter changes, his time signature changes, and they work really, really well in this piece. The middle lyrical section is absolutely lovely. It's a little sort of interlude, and it's a nice break in between the outer sections of the piece, which are very, very driving and intense. They're very aggressive. There's, there's great percussion. The whole thing is very engaging. And again, the Alfred Publishing model for FlexBand works really, really well with a piece like this. So this is Where Stand the Dauntless, Vince Gassi Canadian composition. Plaza Fanfare, Peter Meakin of Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, my hometown. Written during the COVID-19 pandemic, Plaza Fanfare was written to celebrate the new Plaza Rapid Transit Station in Winnipeg. And like when a rapid transit station, which by the way is just a fast bus, we don't have light rail in Winnipeg, but it gets its own street. It's very exclusive, and it gets to go 80 kilometers an hour instead of 50 on a regular street. So it's like, this is a really big thing for Winnipeg. So Pete wrote this fanfare. So the idea behind this, of course, this was in the middle of the first wave of COVID in 2020. And he wrote this with the intention of social distancing in performance. So it was composed initially for 5 players, 3 trumpets, timpani, and snare drum, who spread out along the southbound platform, but the conductor was across on the northbound platform of the bus station. So that was the whole thing behind it. So now this is the adaptable band version of it. Everybody gets in on the fun of the opening of a new bus station in Winnipeg. Personally, this is one of my favorite Pete Meakin pieces. It's got this cool bass line that doubles with the timpani. And the fanfare itself is very memorable. Like, you listen to this piece and you read it once or twice, and that fanfare will stick in your brain. It has catchy tune syndrome. Not all band pieces are catchy, and not all of them stick in your brain. And so there's something to be said for that, right? It takes something special for them to be that memorable. I haven't told Pete this, but I actually sing Plaza Fanfare when I'm by myself cooking sometimes. That's how memorable it is to me. So I love this piece. It's very different from a lot of the other pieces on this list. Give it a listen. Plaza Fanfare, Peter Meakin. Turmoil, Ryan Meebower. This piece reflects the title accurately: chaotic, extreme contrasts, and loud. Although it presents several challenges, it's designed to capture the interest of both young musicians and listeners. The main melody, to me, is built as sort of like an articulation variation study. It's brilliant because it distinguishes Specifically, it's got a slur 2 pattern in the eighth notes in the melody, and I love that because it'll get them practicing. And especially being a trombone player and trombone teacher, my students have never been able to do that properly. And so having a piece like this, especially in a flex band format that gives everybody an opportunity at the melody, is fantastic. This is a very involved piece. It's very busy. There's a lot going on. A lot of it happens concurrently to itself. It's a puzzle. There's a lot of pieces to put together at the same time, even in the reduced flex band version. Okay. I don't want to sit here and say it's graded incorrectly, because when you look at each individual line and you look at each part, they are actually falling into the grade category that it's at. However, maybe when you put it together, it might be more on the 2.5 to 3 side. It just depends what your criteria is for grading. By the way, if you need help with that, there are a couple of tools and handouts from clinics that I've done on this on the Harknett website in the teacher resource section. So rhythm, articulation, clarity. Those are all sort of fun things to work on. There's this mass-like section about 2/3 of the way through the piece. It's a lyrical section, but it's just absolutely lovely. This has become one of my preferred Ryan Meeboer pieces. What is your favorite Ryan Meeboer piece? I'm curious to know. My favorite, I would say, is The Conquest from a couple of years ago. As a salesperson, that piece absolutely blew off the shelves so quickly, and we put it on festival syllabi, and it was very successful, and it just is so fun and so engaging. I personally really like Jagged. I like The Tides of Fate. All of these ones that I like of his all sort of share a similar sound in terms of the modal feel, the minor keys. They're all very intense, and the ones that I've just listed are splattered across the grades. Obviously, there are some that are easier that sound just as good. So Ryan Meeboer, Turmoil. Squirrels is a Canadian composition by Brian Jagger of Burlington, Ontario. Brian is a music teacher and a gigging musician, really all over that sort of Halton region, Hamilton area, and beyond. And he's also a composer and, ensemble director, and he wears many, many hats. The piece was composed during the pandemic, and it was originally composed for a friend of his to be sort of the soundtrack for a video, which was one of 3 videos about the natural surroundings of Burlington. The music reflects the characteristics of squirrels. It's simple, yet not simplistic in its melodic and harmonic style. The themes are passed between each of the instruments, allowing all of the performers to take part equally. And so I agree with that. And when you look at the score and you listen to it, it's everybody has got an opportunity to actually make a melodic statement, which is fantastic. I find the piece extremely calming. It is very positive, right? And we don't always hear that come through in some of these compositions. It's got this sense of bewilderment. It's got a lot of imagery to it, as he's already stated there. All sorts of pictures come to mind. The flexible model of this piece works really well with, as minimal a band as you have. Like, it could really literally be, less than 10, even less than 5, and it's going to work well in a small cohort, but it will also sound good in an expanded ensemble. And by the way, on that note, if you go to his website or the Harknett site, you'll also see that he's got a full band arrangement of this piece as well. So this is called Squirrels by Brian Jagger of Burlington, Ontario. Feller from Fortune, Bill Thomas, York University. Based on the Newfoundland folk song Feller from Fortune, this piece has been transformed from the original jig to become an energetic overture featuring a number of solo opportunities, interesting percussion parts, and some simple mixed meter work. There are so many little solo lines and little opportunities, like Bill said, which are part of what I regard as sort of this driving momentum throughout the piece, which paves the way for some interesting twists and turns rhythmically, especially when the time changes. So the mixed meter is sort of the big thing in this piece. It's fun. There's a little bit of extra challenge that comes in with that sort of preparation and teaching. It's a lovely Canadian composition. This many of you have performed the full version of this piece in the B300 Music Fest Nationals list, or at any of the affiliated festivals. So, feller from Fortune, Bill Thomas. Escape Route, Todd Stalter. I have never met a Todd Stalter piece for concert band that I didn't absolutely love. This is another grade 3 piece, very similar in nature to a few that many of us are very familiar with. Counterbalance from the B300 list of OBA is one that many of us have encountered at one time or the other. Scramble, Critical Mass. So these are all sort of, Shashi's top pick, but also Todd Stalter favorites for band, and this is sort of in that same realm. His description: Escape Route contains musical explorations of the many different actions implied in its title, such as quickness, stealth, boldness, evasion, elusiveness, and the adrenaline rush that accompanies them. This piece has this interesting 3/4 section in the middle with a totally different feel. It's still, like I said, a very aggressively composed work. There's tons of percussion. There's chromatics all over the place. So it's a great teaching tool and opportunity to work on things at sort of that next level for a developing band. There's a lot of ostinato. There's a ton of sort of articulation variation, but a lot of work to do on the staccato and shorter articulations. It's so much fun to play his pieces. So I hope you enjoy Escape Route, grade 3. Oppositional elements is an exciting exercise in the interaction of opposing voices texturally as well as contrapuntally and dynamically. The constant interplay of different elements, sharing space with alternating accents and rhythmic figures, provides an energy much like that which is created between magnets both in attraction and repulsion. Motivic ideas bounce off of each other constantly, driving the piece to a frenzied close. So, I love this piece. This is a really difficult adaptable flex band piece, probably one of the hardest ones I've ever heard. It is a huge puzzle. Every time I listen to it, I enjoy listening to it, and I've listened to it a lot, especially in the car while I'm driving, which maybe might not be the best idea, because every time I listen to it, I hear something different. I will sort of attach myself to one voice or one line and listen to the way that it develops. And then when I come back and listen to the piece the next time, I'll focus on a totally different line, or the first one that I thought I heard is actually doing something different the next time. So it's kind of an ever-evolving path of learning for this one. It reminds me of John Mackey, and his compositions really reminds me of Frank Ticheli. So if you hopefully know who the two of them are, they're very big, well-known, prolific, high-level band composers for the genre, and it's sort of, in a way, a tribute to their compositional style. So the way that I would execute this in rehearsal, I would probably do a 3-step preparation process. First, the students individually at home with the recording, which, of course, virtual learning supports. And then when they come back together with instruments and their colleagues, I would Work on it in groups of 4 because it is scored for flexible 4-part, and then put it together as a larger ensemble or a larger cohort, and add the percussion as needed and as you have available. And then maybe a project for assessment might be trade parts and have the students work on a different line than what they had originally learned for assessment. So, lots of ideas for this one. This is Oppositional Elements, Leslie Gilraith. So thank you all again for taking the time to review these pieces of repertoire with me today. I know that some of you probably watched the session in installments, and some of you probably even have watched the individual links from the website. On the harknettmusic.com/honor roll website, all of the product information and ordering information is available for the titles. Now, for those of you who are watching this session right away in the first week of school, there are going to be minimal wait times for Harknett to get all of the stock organized. Everything is on order. Everything is ready to go, and it's sort of all in the process of happening. Similar thing that what happened last year, if some of you supported that list last year. So just sort of getting things started and getting things awake again, and everything will be totally available. But put in your orders with Rex, Mary, or John as soon as you can. Now, if you have any questions about any of these pieces, if you want more information, if you need advice as far as what to do with your classes, your cohorts, your rehearsals, if you have them, or any programming advice or any program advice, please feel free to email me. My Harknett email address is still working. It's shashi@harknettmusic.com. Fastest way to get me is through my business my real estate address, which is humberbayrealestate@gmail.com. Call me, text me, get me on the Harknett Messenger or on Humber Bay Real Estate Facebook Messenger. There's so many ways to reach me, and I'm happy to help and try to be a resource for you moving into this school year and especially into the future. So I wish everybody all the best with the start of the school year and the evolution of the year, and especially for your programs. And I just hope all of us can get everything back on track together as soon as possible, so that the new normal, old normal, whatever you want to call it, becomes reality. Thanks again for watching.